Welcome to the third episode of Winning Ways by the Washington State Football Coaches Association. And I'll tell you what, my guest today, if we had a Mount Rushmore of Washington high school football, these would be at least two of those four faces up there. And I think it's only appropriate that the mountain is called Mount Rushmore because these two guys like to run the rock. I think I may not know exactly what ROTA stands for, but I'm pretty sure it involves running the football pretty well, right? So these guys like to run the ball, and they win a lot of football games and have won a lot of football games. In fact, they are tied at the top with the most wins in Washington State football history, with 394 wins as head coaches, and it's kind of cool because the tie happened when Coach Otton resigned 9 years ago now, I believe it is. He was about 70, 80 wins ahead of Coach Kohler, and last year, Coach Kohler had to go 13-0 and win the state championship to reach that tie. And so we've had a whole, the celebration, winning a state championship, and then this whole offseason. And here we are, we're 1 week away from the first game of the 2025 season. And Coach Kohler is going to have a chance to take that title to himself as a winningest coach. But it's been really cool to have a year of just sharing that title. And both these guys, I know, they're competitors. You don't win that many games without being competitors, but I know they're going to downplay it. But it's a pretty special thing for our coaches in our state to celebrate you guys. And what an accomplishment it's been. We're proud of you guys. It's been just an awesome honor to watch you guys over the years. And so we'd like to hear in a few minutes some of your thoughts on, having this shared title for a while of the winningest coach in state history, and maybe Monty, some thoughts on moving forward and the likelihood that you'll break that soon, and Sid on what it's meant to be in that position and to share this honor with Coach Kohler and to have a guy like him break that record. So before we hear your thoughts on that, though, I do want to remind coaches out there in the state, hey, join the Washington State Football Coaches Association. We're bringing all kinds of good work your ways. If you join the association, you get $2.5 million plus in liability coverage. You get access to Coach of the Year awards. You get all state recognition for your players. There's the Terry Ennis Scholarship. Plus, there's this fraternity, which is really cool to be a part of. And so we encourage all high school and middle school coaches in the state to join the Coaches Association. You can find it at washcoach.net. And we'll include that in the link in description. And if you're a follower, please like and subscribe. I'm new to this podcast game, but I hear you're supposed to say that. So here we go. Gentlemen, congratulations on amazing careers. And Monty, yours is continuing right now. First, I would like to say, Coach Otton, to have a guy like Coach Kohler be the guy who has tied your mark and move on, likely to break that soon. What does it mean to you to have a guy like Coach Kohler be that guy?
Well, they say records are made to be broken, and certainly I didn't start my career thinking that's where I'd be. I was just trying to keep a job way back then. But Monty's always done a great job. We played each other, I think, in '89 and early 2000s, and he's been very, very consistent. He gets a lot out of the players that he has, and to continue in the short amount of time he's coached, it's pretty amazing, to have that many wins. It took me a lot of years, and so I'll congratulate him early. And I don't know if this is appropriate, and I apologize to Monty, but I think it was 2004 or 5 when we got that situation. And so I got a letter from, I believe it was at that time, the coach at Burlington Edison. And I opened up the envelope, and it was a letter that had been passed on from him to everyone. And he opened it up, and it's a picture of the middle finger. And so Monty, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get that letter because I threw it away a long time ago.
All right, Coach. I appreciate that.
But no, and then Monty, you're a Montana guy, right, Monty?
Yes, sir.
And he's proud of it. And just done an awesome job up there with those guys. Been fun to watch, and I think that in all the games that I coached, the two worst whippings we got, Jack Swarthout back in the early '70s beat us 57-6, and I think it was the year 2002 or whatever that we went up and played O'Day, and it's about the same score, but we were the ones. I don't even know if we scored that game, but just great job and continued success to you. I was actually thinking of advertising for a GoFundMe for Monty to get him over to Montana next week. But just congratulations, Monty, early.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah.
And Monty, how about this looking forward? And I know, especially as an active coach, you want to keep your focus one game at a time. And I know you got GK, you got to travel to GK, and in your 13-0 record last year, that was one of your two closest games. It was 35-28, and now you're going to their place. I know they've got a talented team, and Jeff Logan, their coach, is a member of the Coaches Association Executive Board, and it was fun a few weeks ago spending time with the two of you and hearing you guys good-naturedly kid each other. And hey, is it going to have to wait a week or two or three or but I know you're not counting your chickens before they hatch and any of those kind of things, but at some point it's going to happen, and there is a time for reflection, and I know sometimes that's when it's all done. But can you take a moment right now and just reflect on what it means in the years, and to put your name one notch ahead of Coach Otton, a man of his stature?
Dan, like Coach, I'm sure he never even thought. I don't think about it. I mean, we're just trying to get ready, and I mean, hopefully it happens this year. I'm assuming it's going to happen, but we got obviously Graham, and then we go right into league play. So, it when it's over, and if it happens, and when it happens, I mean, probably really won't even think about it till after the season is over, because you know how that is. As soon as you win, you got to move on to that next week's opponent. So, but obviously, when it happens, again, it will be. I understand what it means, and to share it right now with Coach Otton. This whole year's kind of been a real joy. I don't know if Coach Otton remembers, but I started at O'Day in 1985, and but my college roommate and we coached in Montana against each other up on the High Line, and then he took the job at Weber State, and he was down there as a volunteer. His name's John McDonnell, and I went down there to spend a week in June before I even came to Seattle in 1985, and Coach Otton, I believe, is the first All-American that Weber State ever had. And I believe he probably doesn't remember, but that's when I met him. I actually met Coach Otton in 1985 before I came here, and he was a gracious coach. And, I was 25 years old and coming to Washington, coming out of 8-man football, scared to death that I knew had any idea what I was doing. But he was just he was pleasant to talk to and always wished me the best, and just I'll never forget that. So it was quite a memory.
That's awesome. And one of the many Hall of Fames that Coach Otton is part of, he's part of the Weber State Hall of Fame as well. So I know he's got quite a legacy there as well. I'll throw out a few other numbers. I know 394 is kind of the big one that people are aware of with your guys' connection. But some numbers for Monty. He has, Coach Otton says, in so few of years. 41 years as the head coach at O'Day, and his total record is 394-64. He's won 5 3A state championships, 26 league championships. He's gotten his team to the state playoffs 34 times, 86% winning percentage, and he's never lost more than 3 games in a single year. I tripled that in my first year coaching, so you know. And Coach Otton, in 49 years, 394 wins, 131 losses, which is 75% winning percentage. 6 state championships, one of which you may not be aware of was not at Tumwater. It was before Tumwater. We'll talk about that in a little bit. 25 league championships, 27 state playoff appearances. He was the 2006 AFCA National Power of Influence Coach of the Year, and 2010 and 2016 the Seahawks Coach of the Year. So lots of wins and titles and all those kind of things. So Coach Otton, I just mentioned that there was one state championship that you won prior to Tumwater, and that came at Colfax High School, right after a short stint at Coupeville. And your time at Coupeville, your record was 5-11, 3-6, 2-5, and then you went to Colfax and over 4 years there were 28-8 and had a 9-0 state championship year before you ever went to Tumwater. So can you reflect a little bit on those early years from Coupeville to Colfax and what that first state championship was like?
Okay, so Coupeville, kind of what happened there is right after Weber, I'd signed to play with Dallas and was there in their camp for long enough to have a couple sodas and got fired like we all do in football somewhere. And came back mid-July and went to the placement bureau, and there was a little job up in the middle of Wyoming that was open, and then there's one at Coupeville. And so I called Coupeville, and the guy hired me over the phone, which tells you what you might be getting into. But it was a great experience. Beautiful island. We lived in it. My wife and I just really enjoyed that part of it. But after leaving, the problem there is I was a former lineman. The one coach I had was a lineman. We didn't have dilly squat about what a cushion meant for DBs or anything like that until we played Kings or somebody like that. Anyhow, following that, got my master's at Utah State, and then I really didn't want to go back into the classroom. I mean, at Coupeville, you didn't have a classroom. I didn't. I had a briefcase and I'd wander around with the kids from one room to another, and I didn't really care for that. And so at Colfax, it was following Jerry Parrish, and they'd been 9-0, so there's quite a lot of expectations, always were that way in Colfax. So we ended up deciding, okay, well, let's take the job was offered, let's take it, and that was the best move to go there and learned a lot there and had those kids, those farm kids are pretty neat to coach, and so I learned a lot. Had a great mentor in Bob Bafus, who was a basketball coach, and I was his assistant. He was my assistant, and times were different then. Our weekend staff meetings were in his old pickup pheasant hunting, and things you'd like to be able to do again. But then I had an urge. I wanted to get back on the west side, and we found a job at Tumwater, so that's where we headed.
Awesome. And Monty, I saw your head nodding when times are different and the farming community and so forth. And I know your roots are deep in Montana, and you kind of thought that when you took the O'Day job that it would be a short time before you headed back. And here's been 41 years. But your first coaching as a young guy was as an 8-man football coach as at Opheim High School. Is that correct?
Opheim.
Opheim. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your experience, 1 year as an assistant and 2 years as the head coach at an 8-man football school in Montana.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, the community and the people and the kids were, it was completely farm. I was telling one of my coaches yesterday, actually, we were talking about it. We tried to do doubles, and the people would come to you and say, you can have my son for one, but we got a harvest and I need him for the other. I mean, so it was all that kind of atmosphere, but it was just, great people, great kids, hard, tough kids. And, football's, football. I mean, it's blocking and tackling, and that's what we kind of focused on there. And, we weren't really that good, but we, had again, it was a learning experience for me and for the kids, and I still keep in contact with some of those kids. I had a kid, one of my classes there, like I said, it was Class C in Montana, and I had two boys in the class, like in the freshman class, there were only two boys, and I was there for 3 years, and great memories, great memories.
That's awesome. So then you move to Seattle, and I recall you saying, Montana's so big that I took the job in Seattle, and I was still closer to my hometown than if I moved to the other side of my right. But to come into O'Day High School and um, just to establish such a model of consistency, and I'm sure it was more difficult in some ways in those first few years as you were laying the foundation. But what became important in the culture you wanted to build at O'Day and what has persisted today? So the culture piece is kind of what I'm looking for. What were you trying to build then? Maybe how has that evolved, and what importance does culture play on you today?
100%. I mean, again, when I first came here, and I was blessed, I came in with a great class of kids. So we started together. And we had some talent above us, but as freshmen and then sophomore, junior, senior, that those kids wanted to win. My first year I came in and we were running again uh, completely Mike Price's offense. I mean, I went to there and that's what we were running. West Coast, throw the ball. I mean, a lot of our passing records are still from year one, year two for me here. And we had a quarterback that could throw. He went on and play at the University of Idaho. But I soon realized that I felt that we could, you know, um, build linemen and that we weren't always going to have the quarterback. And so the idea of discipline and hard work, I think, were kind of the first things that we started to really emphasize. And I think that has kind of played out over the years that, with average running backs and, just like Tumwater kids too, tough linemen that, those, the offensive line is a fun place to be, fun place to coach. And with that, you build a toughness and a discipline that spreads throughout the team. And so, again, we've been blessed to continue that kind of culture here. And, the kids, I mean, they know what to expect. That idea of trusting the process, and that's what we do. We're not a flavor of the month kind of football team. We do what we do, and there's years we throw it more and emphasize fullback, emphasize tailback. But again, the foundation of it, and then again, something we took, always the our philosophy, the basis of everything we do is Lou Holtz's, can we trust you, committed to excellence, and do you care about others? And that's every time I get a chance to talk to the kids, those are the three things I talk about and that we believe in, and that idea of trust. And, each one of those we emphasize at different times throughout the course of the season.
Awesome. Coach Otten, I've visited Tumwater and been in the locker room before. And last time I was in there, they still had the geese up above in the locker room. And I've heard a lot about ways that you've developed team and the efficiency of the geese flying in formation and so forth. And you've got your never give up, right? You've got your sayings and different things that have lasted even into a player that Coach Beatty that had played for you, and now we got Coach Garrow that, it's surprising probably to some people that it's not a Tumwater grad that came in and wasn't part of the Tumwater staff, because you have such a tradition there. And yet he's gone in and it's just continued and built on that success. He's a member of the board for the Coaches Association, and we've been blown away by how organized he is, and he's really top notch, right? But he's had to, because you laid such a foundation, come in and say, hey, you know what? They've already got a winning culture. They've got a lot of things here that are Tumwater football, and he's not going to change that, even if he wouldn't have done that his exactly that way somewhere else. So you've laid a tremendous tradition that has continued, and you've got a lot of staff that have stayed on. Talk to me about how you built such a culture like that and what was important to you.
Let me back up just real quick, just because Monty mentioned about learning about when you can practice and when you can't. Going back to Colfax, and I pride, I knew I had deficiencies as being a head coach, but one thing it can be is organized. And I had this whole plan organized, 2-a-day practices, and this is what we're going to do. And then I got a lesson. No, that's not what you're going to do. Harvest is a little bit more important than, football. Footballs are very important. So we had to have one practice 8 o'clock at night, because the kids would go out. But, just I learned a lesson. Another lesson I learned was I coached at Utah State as a grad assistant, kind of a deal. I coached at Weber, 2 springs in the fall, and I learned a valuable lesson. At Weber, Tom Ramich was my mentor. He went on to BYU as a great line coach, and that Coach Merlin Olson. Um, but when I got there, he says, "Hey, Sid, you're going to coach the tackles, and so you take them over there." And he let me coach. When I was at Utah State, there was 2 of us, 3 of us were with a freshman, and the head coach did all the coaching. He just kind of stand there not feeling used, and so that's been kind of a real thing for me is find good people, but give them something to do and make and don't call it your team, my team, this stuff. It's give a recognition out where it's deserved, and so I think that was a big part. I mean, when we retired in 2016, I'm talking about Pat Alexander and Steve Shao and I. I'd been there at Weber or Tumwater for 43 years. Pat had been there for 41 years. Steve Shao had been there for 37 years. Some of the other ones have been there just around 30 or 25. But I think that all becomes, they coach. They're important to what we did. So that's a huge thing. You get good players, but you got to develop them, and I've been real fortunate there. And back up to Bill Beatty, he's kind of like a son. He when I was came to Tumwater, he was a freshman. So the first year we won 4, the next year we win 2, next year we win 1, and by then I should have been fired. If they had these little phones where everyone could talk all the time, I'd been fired. But Bill Beatty's group came through and they were seniors and they had a good junior class and they had a tremendous year and kind of got things rolling and it's neat to see those guys because they just stay close. They've been really close, but I think they kind of got it going and coaches, you find good ideas. I don't know if you call them stealing from others, but you go. That's why you go to clinics and so some of the things we did with our culture. One, Grant Teff, I'm sure maybe you went to some of his. He's the only one I think I ever went to a clinic where you got a standing ovation. But one thing he talked about was the secret society of the Gold Dot when he's at Baylor. And so me and another coach are going home and pretty soon you're forming it into Tumwater. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 nights ago, Willie, who is doing a great job there, had a bunch of coaches that aren't coaching anymore come over and help tell the kids what the principles stand for, and so just, they've added, both Bill, both Willie have added, but they also kept the main core of, what had been developed. So, and the geese story you talked about, that's why it's good to go to church because that's where I heard that talk was in church. And there was a time when we were not doing too good, and I kept the seniors out after practice, and the coaches and the others went inside, and one of the coaches, they said they looked back and there was geese flying over us, but they weren't in a V. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's why that's still up over there. It's just that story has a lot to share with how things should be as far as unity.
Yeah. I'm going to go another question for you, Sid. You mentioned that there were some rough years early, a 1-win season in there, and you felt like maybe you should have been fired after your first 3 seasons when you were 7-20. And,
Yep.
and Coach Beatty, he had a team that was committed and got you, enough grace to keep going. And the Tumwater history goes on, and after him eventually. We reach 1986, and you have another strong team that goes 11-1, and they reach the state semifinals, and then that's the most successful team you had at Tumwater up to that point. And so most people, I think, would say, well, let's just keep doing what we're doing. But I know you had a senior heavy class, and the next year you were thinking maybe 87 was going to be maybe a bit of a rebuild because you'd lost a lot of pieces. And I've always just thought Tumwater, that's wing T football, right? Well, it wasn't up until that point. You were split back veer, right? And
yeah.
And Coach Kohler was mentioning early in his time that they had, some good quarterbacks and they were doing the wazoo, throw the ball around, and still some of the records stand. But he identified, hey, I can build linemen, right? I can build consistency over time. And you, in the off season of that state semifinal appearance, decided to completely revolutionize things on the offensive side of the ball and in two platooning players. Can you speak to me a little bit about that transition to wing T and then as well the two platoon system?
Okay, so when I came to Tumwater, I did the same thing we did at Colfax, which was I formation. You had a big fullback, had a tailback that started at Boise State his freshman year. I mean, I tried that at Tumwater the first year. The tailback longest run was 9 yards. I mean, it's up front really what counts, and so we struggled with that. And then Lou Holtz comes out with a twin veer, and that looked really good. And I had about 50 kids out, and I explained the positions, and you got your twin whiteouts out there, and half the team went out wanted to try out for those two, so I knew we were in a little trouble there. But for us, it put a lot of pressure on the quarterback too, and so the wing tee was something that maybe was pretty unique. It stood the test of time. You could balance everything between the quarterback and the running backs and all that kind of stuff, and so Randy Reynolds and I went to a clinic, and the guy from Georgia talked about those two things. He talked about wing T, and he talked about the principles of why you platoon.
Mhm.
And so that 87 year when we won that first one here at Tumwater, we were terrible on offense. It took us forever to get going. But Pat Alexander had the defense, all those guys, and so they're playing awesome because we were like 2-3 to start the season. But then when we got into the state championship game against West Valley, they'd never seen wing T. And, they were keying into the backfield. And so it just looked like it's supposed to look. And so I just, we worked to develop it, and Bill kept it, and Willie does too, but they maybe do more out of a gun or something and add their own stuff to it. But it just, I don't know, it just worked really well. And became a big part of what we were doing.
Yeah, the courage to change things so much after a state semifinal appearance. Um, but when you're pursuing excellence and always looking at and evaluating, how do we make this better? How do we get to that next level? So to do all that and then to come back after 3 early season losses and win your first state title in '87, that's pretty awesome. Coach Kohler,
Could I add one more
yeah,
thing?
go for it.
Because Kohler, Monty knows Jack Swarthout, Montana guy. And when he came to Capitol, he did platoon. And his feeling on the platooning was you can develop kids by game 4, that maybe would have been a backup guard or something like that, but now they become a starting guard. Plus, you get bigger turnouts because more kids are going to play. So that's kind of what it did. And then later years, we had some kids, the real good kids, that were going both ways. But it was a good thing when we're doing it early on.
Yeah. You mentioned it's a good idea to go to church for a lot of different reasons, right? Monty, you've your entire football career, right? You played at a Catholic school. You went to Carroll College, a Catholic school, and then it's been Catholic school all the way through. And can you tell me the importance of that to you and of your faith, and maybe how you incorporate that into how you coach it at O'Day?
Well, yeah, obviously it's a very important part of my life and important part of our culture and O'Day High School. I tell the boys that again, the most important thing we do here at O'Day High School, before every game, we celebrate Mass, and so the number one, the most important thing that we do as a football community and team is celebrate the Eucharist. And obviously we're different than a lot of schools where we can, we pray before games, after games, we pray kind of when after different kinds of practices during the season. So anytime we feel like it's okay for us to do that, obviously. And so, prayer and our faith is very important to our culture. And I guess, like not all of our kids are Catholic, but they all kind of buy into what we do. And our parents, we pray together after a game. We bring our parents in there. And usually, sometimes I have to lead it, but usually Father Johnson is a part of that at the end of the games, and he'll lead us in closing prayer. So again, I think it's great because it helps put everything in perspective, because football's still just a game. Like I said, I tell the kids, it's third or fourth on the list of things as you're going through high school that are really important. So don't make it your life, and don't make it the highlight of your life after you leave. You got so much more to explore and be a part of and grow with. So this is just a tool to help you move along, and using faith as that tool to guide them, I think, is important.
Another important thing that I don't think any successful coach can be successful without a good support system from assistant coaches and from family. I'll hear from both of you on this, but I'll go with Coach Otton first. Maybe the importance of the support of family, and then if you want to, you've already touched on a few assistant coaches, but family, and then a few coaches that were just really impactful as assistants in your program.
So I went to Weber State. Best thing happened there is I met Margene. My son Tim went to Weber State. Best thing that happened to him was his wife Sally. Our son Brad started at Weber State. Best thing happened to him there was he found his wife. When we started out, Coupeville, she would go with me to scout football games. I didn't like giving talks, So the first talk I was going to get when I got to Coupeville, there was actually 16 players and 2 parents there, but could have been hundreds. And so we were out in the Fort Casey, the old fire hall stand, and she would have me practice my talk, and help me. And then she'd, praise me afterwards, and that. So Unity Camp, she was the secretary in the front office, and one of the vice principals got mad because she was doing too much work for me, and so we got rid of him somehow. But she just, not just bringing in a couple boys that could help our program. She just, and I think I mentioned to you, she's going through the cancer treatment right now, and part of the principles we try and teach. She just trying to stay as positive as she can, one day at a time, and never giving up and all that. And so over the years, the love just grows stronger in our family. We got our daughter Tana here, and we got our son Tim, live right here. Brad's down in California. But it's just a very close family. We love being together and enjoying those times, and wouldn't be much. And that's kind of Brad ended up coaching under John Robinson at UNLV, and he was just starting his little family out, and John was a big time grinder, and so it was really early in the morning, get home at 10 or whatever, and Brad just felt like that's kind of hard to raise your family, and so he got out of it and went into private business. But in our case, Margene's so involved in our program. We were a block away. It's a kind of a different story, and I'm glad that the family's been sharing it. Tim was our defensive coordinator for quite a few years there after Pat retired, and and Tana was the head volleyball coach here, and now her daughter is the head volleyball coach here. It's just sharing those experiences is great. And it's really tough. I mentioned Bob Bafus before. He's just turned 90. What a guy. And the lesson I learned being with Bob was a yeller, because him and Jerry Parrish, I don't know if you can imagine those two together, but it was, so we were, first game I coached the Colfax, we go into locker room halftime well ahead, and I'm in one section, and I got the running backs and those kind of guys, and so just start talking to them, and he's got the lineman down past the shower in another part, and just hollering, and just, that was his style. And he would always come back and coach him up after he got his message across. And then we had one coach on the staff that wanted to try and copy Bob's way, and that doesn't work. You got to kind of the lesson learned, be yourself, coach the way you coach. And but surely Bob, some other coaches there come in here, the early coaches at Randy Reynolds and Tom Odegaard, some of those guys, but Pat's the big one. I mean, we lost him in December, and I tell you, you know, what you talked about, like our license plate says, never give up, never give up. And you know, well, he had a list. You know, you got your little list of what you want to do in your lifetime. Well, his list, his last one was he wanted to be at that state championship game up in Husky Stadium.
Yep.
So Margie and I took him and his wife. Tim Graham had a wheelchair ready for him. We wheeled him underneath there where you guys meet. So he's able to watch the game, you know, and then we took him home and as I was leaving, the last thing we shared with each other is that we loved each other. And we're down a few days later in California and get the call that he had passed away. So certainly big time. We just, you know, he just was a tremendous person, had a tremendous influence on this program, this town. But yeah, there's just the whole staff that I've coached with at Tumwater has just been awesome. And, you know, we just shared good times together. And we, you know, Pat's big deal was having a unity camp with skits, and he always wanted to put me in a role to embarrass me, you know. But just having fun, having marshmallow stuffing contests and jelly slurping and whatever it was. Kids always had a lot of fun. But there's a lot of them that have done a great job. And then the opportunity not only to coach your two sons, but to coach, I mean, play, you know, they played for us, but to have Tim, you know, on our staff for a long time and that gets pretty good. And I'll just share one thing, you know, through this ordeal we're going through, you know, I figure probably, well, you have the numbers there, but maybe coach 550 games or whatever it was. And when Marjane came down with the diagnosis, you know, what she had, Tim sends me a message and it says, "Dad, it's time to coach your best game ever."
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, so you just, you know, you're the caregiver, and you do it because of how you love that person. So the family's been big, the staff has been huge, and and proud of all of them. And of course, Cars Brands was another one early on. Maybe you know Cars, I think. And so just a lot of great ones.
Awesome.
I'm sure I'm leaving some out, but they all did awesome.
Yeah. Well, you keep coaching that best game, Coach.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Monty, how about you? Importance of family and a few assistants that have been really impactful in your program for you.
Well, a little different than Sid. You know, I didn't get married till I was 45. That's the best thing I ever did. And my wife is an accomplished athlete and way more competitive than I am. And, you know, so if we don't play well or didn't go well or we lose, it's almost like I'm afraid to go home because I'm going to get grilled, you know. So it's, but she's been great. And then, you know, I was 46 when I had my son and 49 when I had my daughter. So my son's a senior in college, daughter a freshman in college now. And like I said, I was able to coach my son, but one of those years was the COVID year, which was too bad. He played quarterback for us, and he's now student assistant at the University of Montana. So obviously, family is, you know, everything. I probably sacrificed a lot in regards to the family piece of it. That's, you know, as times went on, it just seems like the job took more time away from the family. So having my son here was a blessing, that's for sure. You know, I tell people we probably have the oldest coaching staff in America, all levels. I mean, high school, college, you know. So I've got a lot of coaches that have been with me a long time. So, like Sid, that mean a lot. Different roles, different pieces in there. But you know, I have coaches. One coach in his 80s, and a couple in the 70s, and a bunch of us in our 60s. And you know, I'm not going to start naming names because I'll forget somebody too. But it's really pretty cool. And then you get all you know, a lot of your ex-players that come back and coach. You know, and that's really special. I mean, That's because they know what I always tell the coaches, when it's all said and done, we want it to be the most positive experience. And it's not about football, and that the good ones come back. And it's really neat to see the kids that come back to practice and do all those things and watch. And, obviously, that's special. So to have those guys on our staff that we coached at one point and that are O'Day alumni, it's pretty cool. And then, like I said, the family is the most important thing.
Awesome. Speaking of players, obviously talent helps a lot, right, to get a lot of those wins. But you guys have both coached guys who have ended up at the college level and even on to the NFL. Um, that's one measure of success, right? We want to help those guys go on, but if they're a successful firefighter or farmer or whatever else, like that's all that really matters, right? So is there a story that you can think of about a player or two that just, was an inspirational story, somebody that you look back and you get inspiration from, and maybe in what they've done. So be thinking about that, and then also be thinking about a question for each other. I want you guys to ask a question or two of each other. But inspirational story, somebody in your program that you've coached that really just inspired you.
Let me think about that. I think for me, it's just that I don't know if I can name one. I think I draw strength and inspiration from our players and kids daily. I mean, I say to people that, I think when I was 25, 26, it was always about Friday night. And I think Friday night became about you as a coach, your ego out there on the line and your competitiveness. Now I look forward to the Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays because that's the time you're really just you and the players, you and the student athletes. And when we can learn from them, I think that's pretty special. And I think even at my ripe age that I'm still daily learning from kids and they inspire me to, I had some kids out there yesterday because there's a reunion going on this weekend at practice, and it was just fun to see them. And they coach, you look great, your energy, da 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 da, and it's just, they just continue to give you, this inspiration to do what you can to be successful and to try to make an impact on the young men that we're entrusted with. So.
Coach Otten, you got an inspirational story?
Yeah, but I'm probably going to show my age by not remembering the name that's so important. Maybe two.
Uh-huh.
We had a little, they have a really good youth program here, and so I think he was in the third grade at the time, Gavin, and he ended up with brain cancer, and so he was in and out of Seattle all year long. But his dad would bring him to watch stuff, and so we ended up, we have a T-Bird buddy thing. So the player would adopt a young kid. And the player that on our team that adopted him came and said, can we do something with him? And so what we ended up doing, I mean, Pat and I both went and visited a kid in the hospital, but when he was not in the hospital, he ended up coming to our practice. Well, then at the end of practice, we took him and put him on the field with us. We had 80 kids out there, and he was a tailback. And he got to run 50 yards for a touchdown with 80 guys just going. And there was a cameraman from the Daily Olympian there, and he got ran over by our kids. But just seeing a kid that's going through all that kind of stuff. And then the one I just can't throw up his name right now, but maybe Monty can help me. But he played with the Huskies in the early 90s. Maybe you can help me. And he ended up with Lou Gehrig's disease. Does that help you? Because I can't recall his name right now, but he ended up. We brought him in to talk to the team. So when he came to our team, he was in one of those made wheelchairs where you're laying flat. He couldn't talk, but they have through technology where he can put together a talk. And so they did that, and it kind of opened the eyes of our kids and our coaches. And then he would, on a couple occasions, he was on our sideline, like in one of the domes up here for a game. And just seeing somebody going through something like that and still trying to be useful, was special. And I know there are players, and there's the opposite end too. Both Pat and I talked at funerals of kids that had taken their lives. So I mean, when you really work in the coaching profession and get close to kids, it's not just about teaching them how to tackle and block. It's about other things too. And so there's moments of joy seeing people doing great things, and there's these other moments where you're trying to help people, go through their situations. But could I just go back a little bit? 'Cause I just made a couple back to the wife again.
Yeah.
I'm asking forgiveness because once after a game, might have even been O'Day beat us. I don't know, but somebody beat us. And Margene made a comment to me. And I said, honey, you're just a spectator.
Mm.
Stupidest thing I ever made. She's forgiven me.
Yeah.
And then I did want to mention my daughter, Tana, that she volleyball coach and all that stuff. But when she was her first year as a head coach at Meridian, they went to state. And so a local volleyball coach here saw me there and says, because we didn't have a very good year that year. And so I was able to get over to her championship stuff. And she said to me, what are you doing? Come here, watch your daughter get beat.
Mm.
Well, daughter ended up going all the way. And their team, the T-Birds, won the state title in their first year. So you're down there just proud of your, like a dad would be and a mom, and hugging. And she looked at me and says, Dad, what took you so dang long to win a state championship? She did it in her first year. But and other, I'm just hitting some things I didn't hit earlier. I'm sorry if I get you off thing here, but O'Day and Tumwater played, to my recollection, we played twice. We played in '89, and we were able to win that game. It was a semifinal game. And then we played in the year 2002, maybe, and that's the game I mentioned already. We just got annihilated up there. And then we had another team. Maybe it's a year or two later. Maybe Monty can help me, but we were 9-0, and so we were having a playoff with 5-4 Columbia River at our place, and our kids had this habit of getting together the night before by themselves behind the stadium and try and get the meeting going, and they started chanting, beat O'Day, beat O'Day. We hadn't even played Columbia River yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step happens is 5-4 beats 9-0, and then Centuria, I think, ended up playing Monty's team that year. But so you'd asking the thing if we'd ever played each other, and that's the one I can remember, or that particular time.
Yeah, we played in, I think, 1989. And to this day, I say that's one of the best high school football teams. I don't know if it's one of your best, Sid, but it's one of the best high school football teams that we played. And we played pretty well in the first half, and you just knocked us off the field in the second half, and went on to win that state championship. But there's some, it was just a tough physical. Your son was a quarterback. And that was a game, one of those games that I think we played one or two wing T teams, but after that game, that was when we went in a deep dive in how we're going to move forward, try to be able to defend the wing T, and reading guards, doing the things that we developed in our system to allow us to play those wing T teams. And I mean, it started in '89, and it's really some of the same principles we used this past December against Bellevue. So, and then we played, I think it was 2000, Sid, when we played at Memorial.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it was I think the opening round of the playoffs, and it was, so we're 1-1. We'll take it that we'll leave that at that place. That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to think about a question or two that you would like to ask each other? So, Monty, do you have a question for Sid?
Um, I haven't had a chance to think about it, so I'll probably have to shoot from the hip here. Y- I guess my question is, Sid, how did you know it was time to retire? That's obviously that's in my near future, and it's one of those things I want to make sure I don't overstay my welcome. Um, how did that and how was the transition to retirement?
How did I know? I guess my body was telling me because you're out on this astroturf for 2 hours on a practice, and practice is over, and you think you got to walk all the way to the locker room. And I mean, the year after I had uh, retired, I had both knees replaced and the right hip replaced.
Mhm.
Maybe that was a little bit of it. Plus, Pat was a couple years older than me, and I think he was just going to stay around if I'm going to stay around. And I think it just felt like time. And I think maybe of a mistake in a way. The mistake would be personal. That particular year I retired, Cade was a senior, and then Ryan was like seventh grade or eighth grade, and I just didn't feel I could hang in there that long, for personal reasons to coach him. And I wish maybe in a big way that I had done that, but I don't know. You get tired and you want, your wife deserves, I guess, some more time with you or whatever. Just kind of felt it was time, and you know, you could probably go. That guy back in Carolina, did he go to 85 years old or something like that? Can you match that money?
No, I cannot.
Uh,
So he also asked about the transition. So if you can think about that, but you mentioned Cade and Ryan and so those grandsons of yours, is that correct? That it
yeah,
went on to the UW and one's in the NFL right now?
yeah. Cable is a tight end, starting tight end for Tampa Bay,
Mhm.
and Ryan just did a medical retire. He kept getting hurt and couldn't get healthy, and so he just last month or so he made that decision, and it's tough on him when he went his first year at the U. His mother died of Parkinson,
Mhm.
and that was that had to be, it was hard on everyone, but really on him.
Mhm.
And that, but he's 6'6", 250. It was 255. I mean, just ideal size for a tight end and everything. But he's not the only one. It doesn't happen for everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's injuries or whatever it might be, and it's kind of a different ball game now, anyhow.
Yeah. Sid, do you have a question for Monty?
Um, yeah, kind of like, so Monty, you said what, 1985 was your first year coaching. So I guess the question would be, what was it like for you, as far as staff meetings, as far as film and all that kind of stuff, type of gear, changes you've seen over the years?
Well, I remember in 1985, I would go home and, I had these sheets to grade film and I put the VHS and I graded every player by myself through the night and and so I remember putting headsets on and just sitting on the floor watching. That was crazy. And the staff meetings were limited, I guess. We didn't put in this kind of time. I think, every year it just kind of, um, you know, repeated. And then pretty soon we're meeting on Saturdays and, you know, um, high school, it's just changed. And I don't know, the kids are better. I think the coaching is worse. I mean, the how we coach is worse. I miss the days, Sid, of, seeing you guys, seeing staffs in general out scouting. We'd come down to Tumwater or wherever it was, and as a staff and the unity that that builds. And that again, I think these young coaches are really missing something when they don't get to experience that. We'd see you guys, your staff, you'd bring 9 guys up to wherever Memorial Stadium to scout somebody in. And, we would bring half that many, but we were there, and just to even to say hi and chat for a minute. And but again, the camaraderie that we built between different coaching staffs throughout the state as well as our own staff. And, now it's, this technology and huddle and, things have just evolved. I think it makes some things easier, but I don't think that the game itself, what the game is supposed to be doing, coaching and player wise, I think we miss something there, the personal side of the game. And so I miss that. I mean, obviously, my wife is, I'm sure, really happy that I'm not gone every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday out scouting. But there was something to be said for that. And um, I just, again, now we got it down pretty good where we come in on Saturday morning, we meet, and we're done by 11. Or the kids, and we're done by 11, and then that's it on Saturday. So the coaches have the rest of the weekend off, and we don't do anything on Sunday. I come in with a couple coaches maybe on Sunday, but it's you know, like you, I'm sure that with my coaches, families first, and with the players too, families first. So I don't ever fault somebody if they got a family something or other and they're going to miss something. So those things are non-negotiable. It's family first, and coaches. Most of the coaches make it, but once in a while, hey, my son's birthday this morning, or soccer game, or whatever it might be, and no problem. So.
What advice would you guys both give to whether it's a young coach or an experienced coach, but a current coach that's coaching high school ball? Whether it's, how do you value that family time and the schedule and all those kind of things, or the culture you set, or whatever you want to choose from. What advice would you give to current coaches right now? Coach Otton, I'll start with you.
Well, Dan, you'd know this probably better. I don't know what the career record sheet looks like, but O'Day's going to keep on winning. And there's going to be a number up there somewhere really high. And I don't know, they say records aren't made to be broken. I don't know if that will be broken. And part of the reason is O'Day's dang good, but the other part of it is they don't stay in that long. The head coaches get out earlier. And it's just what Monty talked about. Why they get out earlier is because of what they have to do. They feel they have to do. And we strive to do something similar for a while that Monty did at Tumwater, was meet on Saturday morning, and then you had the rest of the weekend. Then pretty soon you got the Little League football going. They all have their kids playing, so we went to Sunday nights. But just the amount of time they have to put in is, I mean, I can remember, we're going to play somebody east of the mountains, and you meet up at Snoqualmie, pass film back and forth. It just it's just different, and I just would hope they would. Monty said it, and Pat Alexander gave me one of those maps you put in front of your house, faith, family, football, and those three things are really important. But if it all becomes just football, it takes quite a toll on the family. And so just trying to remember that, and not think you got to outwork the next guy. I mean, just do what you got to do that you feel good about, and not try to feel like you got to stay 5 minutes longer than the guy down the street, is coaching. So
Awesome. Monty?
Well, again, I think, as a young coach, I mean, find out who you are as soon as you can. I mean, that'll always evolve, but, don't try to be, find your, like, I believe, don't be the flavor of the month guy. Something you believe in, something you can coach, and then trust your process. And then again, you don't have to, we're a 2-hour practice team. We have to drive a bus, so it costs us a little extra time getting back, but we're on the field really 2 hours, and that's it. And some teams that practice 3.5 hours, it's not necessary. I mean, I think, if you're organized and efficient, and we don't two platoon, so we're kind of offense on Monday, Wednesday, defense on Tuesday and Thursday, and keep it simple and develop your scheme and trust what you do, and then understand what you do, and you'll have a chance.
Great. So I'm going to close out with uh, I found some quotes from an old article that you guys had said, and I wanted to hear you guys in person first to see if these matched. But here was a quote from Monty of Sid. Sid is awesome. I love Sid. What he did and how he did it was so special because he was such a great coach. The record would mean a lot that way, but it's obviously not why I started coaching. It's not why I'm still coaching, right? And Sid on Monty said they ran their offense very well, were very disciplined. They didn't need a lot of plays, but what they did run was successful. You don't get to where he has gotten without having some very good players, but he coached them up and they played as a group. It was always impressive just how his team would compete. Their culture was that they expected to go to the big game at the end of the year, and quite often they did, right? And then a quote from a peer of yours, Dave Miller, a longtime coach at Lakes High School, had this to say about you guys in an article. There isn't anybody in the state that I have more respect for than Sid and Monty. They do things the right way. And I have to say those, Monty, it's been a pleasure getting to know you well as a member of the board of the Coaches Association over the last number of years. Coach Otton, I've admired you from afar, and when our Lakewood team would go compete against you at camp and so forth,
Mhm.
I always knew who you were and respected and watched you the way you've done things. Never did get to coach against you on a Friday night, but really respect everything you've done. I did, thinking back to those times when you had to go and meet coaches to exchange. I do remember meeting to exchange VHS or DVDs on Deception Pass Bridge with the Coupeville coaches. So the place where you started, I've had to make those exchanges. That
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah.
But um, it's been an honor. I could go on because I could just sit here and talk and listen to you guys for hours and hours, but I want to respect your time. Monty, I would like you to maybe address, though, as a member of the board, the future of football in Washington State and what you think is an important thing moving forward for our state.
Well, again, I think football. I mean, I think it's in a good place. We have to support our young coaches so that they don't leave the game. Um, I truly believe that the young men that are playing, I mean, we got great young men out there. I mean, across the board. I mean, I think that piece of it, we have to do a better job as coaches and adults as modeling it and making the game. I mean, the game hasn't changed, but the way we coach has to change so that they want to be a part of it. And all the things that the safe tackling and the way we coach things, I think it's explaining the why of we do things. And again, I think we all, especially the older coaches and the board, that we have a responsibility to help. And I think we're trying to do a good job with our mentorship program because I think you would all agree that programs are really, if you got the right guy as a coach, that Pied Piper is going to start. He'll develop those kids, and the numbers will come out. And again, if we can all just maybe de-emphasize that you have to win to be successful, and just that your numbers and competition and the values and lessons we learn from the game, that's really what's important. I think the game itself will be better because of that. Obviously, we're competitive, we want to win, all that, and but that will take care of itself. And you got to find those individual successes and victories throughout your season. But again, I think we have a responsibility to try to move the game forward. And I think we're on the right track. I think I think we've kind of overcome a little bit of the concussion piece and moving forward there with safety and tackling. And now we just got to address a few other issues.
All right. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Just really appreciated. And he was talking about VHS. How about Super 8? How about coaching at Colfax and going to a meeting at the Elks Club or whatever it was, and you had a flannel board? You know what a flannel board is?
From church.
Okay, I had a flannel board and I cut out little zeros and stuff, and I mean, things we used to use way back when.
Dan, I don't know if I told you that the only last time I was in Cle Elum was uh, when we played West Valley of Yakima and Joe Ortoff, and we exchanged at Cle Elum. video VHS, and he actually made me go into Safeway and put the video into their little camera bar to make sure that there was O'Day film on it. And I mean, it was crazy what we had to do back then. And Sid, I want to thank you. I know that you were one of the first people to text me after our victory in December, and just know that I appreciate that. And you and your family and your wife are in our prayers.
Well, appreciate that, and go get him. Okay. Have a great year.
Thanks, Sid.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
You bet. Bye bye.
All right, Coach. Thank you.